Amen. Hey, good morning. Sorry, got allergies here. Good morning. My name's Bryan Smith. I am one of the pastors here at Doxology Bible Church, like Dallas said. Excited that you're here with us this morning. If you have a Bible with you, you can go ahead and open it up to Ecclesiastes chapter 8 this morning. We're going to be, we're continuing our series this summer where we're studying through the book of Ecclesiastes in a series we've called More Than All There Is. Okay, while you're finding your way there, I've got some group participation, okay, of something I'd like for your help on this morning, okay? How would you, I'm going to put this statement up here on the board right now. How would you, AJ, can we get this next slide up right here? How would you complete this statement right here? Rules are made to be blank. No, don't tell me yet. Just think about it to yourself, okay? How would you answer? Rules are made to be blank. Now, in my family, there's 4 different people that live in my house, and we would all answer or complete that statement in 4 very different and very distinct ways. Okay, my wife, Ashley, she sees that statement. She would say, rules are made to be followed. Okay, rules are made to be followed, okay? That's why they have it, okay? She is a huge rule follower. She feels guilty if she breaks even the smallest rule, okay? She's the one who she is always going to, wait at least 30 minutes until after she eats before she gets into the pool, okay? She's just a huge rule follower. She would say, rules are made to be followed. My son, Cooper, he sees that statement, and he would say, rules are made to keep us safe. Okay, rules are made to keep us safe. He'd say, hey, if there were no rules, it would just be absolute chaos, and everybody would be in trouble, and the world would just go crazy. Like, he is always going to, turn his phone on, like, airplane mode before he gets onto a plane, because he is absolutely convinced that he is going to be the one to bring down the plane, okay? So he would say rules exist, rules are made to keep us safe. My daughter, Conley, she's 12 years old, she would complete that statement. She would say, rules are made to be questioned. Okay, rules are made to be questioned. That's not that she's not a rule follower. She'll follow the rules, but even since she was just a little bitty baby, she never just took anything at face value. Okay, she wanted to know the reason why. So she's always going to ask the question behind the rules. She's the one, if I tell her, hey, Conley, go upstairs to clean your room, okay, all that's going to do is just start a negotiation, okay, between she and I. And she's going to say, Dad, like, what do you mean by the word clean? Like, what does that mean? Does that include, under my bed? Okay, she wants to know the reason why. She'd always say, hey, rules are made to be questioned. But me, I would answer like I heard a lot of you answer already out here this morning. I would say rules are made to be broken. Okay, rules are made to be broken. I don't even like the word rules. Okay, I think the word suggestions, okay, is probably a better word. Okay, I just like, man, I know what I want to do. I know the right thing to do. Just get out of my way. Let me do what I know that I need to do. Okay, they're really just suggestion. Rules are made to be broken. Okay, and then all of us, everyone in my family, they complete that statement in a lot of different ways. All of you out here this morning, you would fill in that sentence in a lot of different ways, but regardless of how we respond to them, regardless of how we would, complete that statement right there, the fact that rules exist remind us all of something, okay? The existence of rules remind us that we are people who live under authority. Okay, we're just people that live under authority. Okay, rules exist is because there are people and there are systems, okay, behind that rules. We are all people on this earth. We are all people who live under authority. We live under authority, whether it's parents to presidents, from teachers to traffic cops, from bosses to basketball coaches. Okay, we all live under authority. Okay, whenever we think of authority, okay, and authority figures in this world, we think about them and we respond to them in a lot of different ways, okay? And the way that we respond to the different authority figures in this world, a lot of it, some of it has to do with our personality, okay? That's kind of what I think it was probably true with me. It's just kind of always been my personality just to kind of push against rules. But a lot of the reasons that we respond to rules and we respond to authority in the way that we do has a lot to do just with our experience, with our different experiences with people in charge of us, people over us, our experiences with people and systems of authority. Some of you may have had good kind of run-ins with authority. Maybe you've had some good bosses, good parents, good leaders in your life, and they use their authority, okay, to self-sacrificially serve people around them. And because of that, you're like, hey, I can trust people. Okay, I can trust people who are in charge. But let's be honest, a lot of us, that's not always the case. Okay, we've had bad experiences with authority. We've had bad run-ins with people in charge, okay? People who have used their power, people who have used their authority, okay, in ways that have really, really hurt people around them. We've had bad bosses. Maybe you had some bad parents, okay? We've had bad, government officials. You've had bad pastors, okay? And because of that we've had experiences, bad experiences with authority figures in our life. A lot of us, we're all really forced to wrestle in some way with this question right here when it comes to authority. Okay, and here's kind of the question I want to talk about this morning. How do I live under authority that I'm not sure that I can trust? Okay, there's authority figures in this world. None of them are perfect. Okay, so how do we live like that? How do we live under authority that we're not sure we can trust? Well, here in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, Solomon, he's going to put his finger, okay, right in the middle of that question. Here's what he's going to show us. When it comes to authority and just the authority in this world and how do we live with it and under it, here's what Solomon's going to show us this morning. He's going to show us, hey, you don't have to rule the world to live well in it. Okay, when it comes to authority and structures in this world, you don't have to rule the world to live well in it. Regardless of who is in charge, it doesn't have to be us. Okay, you don't have to rule the world to live well in it. And listen, that is a very, very important thing. This how we live with authority and wrestle with authority, that's a very important thing for us to get. Because listen, none of us here this morning, you are never going to outgrow authority. Okay, I may be wrong, but my guess is that nobody in this room someday is going to be elected king of the world. Okay, to where he's like, hey, I have nobody to answer to ever in my life. That issue of authority, we all live under it. And if we're going to really flourish in this life, we've got to learn how to deal with it. How does God tell us to live as people under authority? Solomon, he's going to give us some advice here. How you don't have to rule the world to live well in it. He's going to show us two kind of real practical ways that we can do that. Okay, how do we live under that world? So Ecclesiastes chapter 8, beginning in verse 2, the first kind of way that Solomon's going to show us is how do we live? How do we be people who respond and live under the authority in this world? The first thing that Solomon's going to show us is to live well in this world, we have to live with humble discernment. Okay, live with humble discernment. That's kind of the first thing that he's going to show us here. Kind of follow along with me. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, beginning in verse 2. Solomon says, obey the king's command, I say, which, let's be honest, that's pretty easy to say when you're the king. Okay, Solomon's the king. He's writing this. He's saying, hey, obey the king's command, I say. And the reason for that is because you took an oath before God. Okay, obey the king's command because you took an oath before God. So the reason that we obey the king's command or to obey authority is because of this oath to God. Okay, and so that word, that phrase there, that verse, obey the king's command, it is literally the Hebrew kind of literal translation of that verse right there. It says, obey the king because of the God oath. Okay, obey the king because of the God oath. And there's a couple different ways that you could take that. The people who translated the NIV said, hey, that's probably, talking about the people of Israel, this promise, this oath that they took to obey King Solomon. But another way to say that is obey the king because of the God oath, and which a lot of people would say it means, and which I kind of think it means, is it's not really talking about the oath that the people took to Solomon, but it's talking about the oath that God made to the people. Okay, the God oath. Okay, this oath that God made to the people of Israel. It's talking about an oath that God made to Solomon's dad, King David, okay, whenever he became king, that God took an oath that he was going to use the king as a way to bless the people of Israel. Okay, in essence, he's saying, hey, the king, obey the king because of the God oath. What it's saying there is, hey, the king is the king because God made him the king. Okay, the king is the king because God made him the king. The authorities that we see in this world, the authorities that we have in this world, they're not there by accident. They were put there by God. Okay, the king is the king because God made them the king. Your boss, okay, you're our government officials, your parents, okay, they are in the position that they are in because God put them there. Okay, the king is the king because God made them the king. It's the same thing that the Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 13. He says, there is no authority that exists except what God has established. Okay, the king is the king because God made him the king. So the reason we obey the king and we obey authorities, it's not because they're perfect. Okay, it's because God is sovereign. Okay, he is in control. Okay, and we kind of trust that. We recognize that. So he says because of that, we obey the king. Okay, because God is in charge. And so because that is true, there's certain ways that we respond and react, okay, to authority figures and systems in this world. It's not saying we do everything they say, but there's a way that we respond to them. Verse 3. So because that, he says, do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Okay, so the king is there. He's established by God. He says, do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. To be in a hurry to leave the king's presence in Solomon's day, it could also be said to turn your back on the king. That was a public act of disrespect. Okay, to kind of turn your back on the king, it was a public act of disrespect. And Solomon's saying, hey, don't do that. Hey, don't be quick. Don't be in a hurry to show this public act of disrespect to authority. It would be like today if one of us just strolled into the Oval Office, regardless of who was president, Biden or Trump, whoever takes that position after us. We just strolled into the Oval Office. We just cussed him out, okay, threw a fit and tore the room apart on live TV. Okay, Solomon's saying don't do that. Don't be in a hurry, okay, to show public disrespect, okay, to these authority figures that God has placed. He's not saying obey everything that they say, but he's saying, hey, we don't lead with outrage. Okay, as people who fear and follow God, we begin with humility, not with hostility. Okay, he says, don't be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. And then he tells us why. He says, do not stand up for a bad cause. Okay, there are going to be some times that you disagree, okay, with the authority figures that exist and that we should. But he's saying, hey, don't stand up for a bad cause. Don't do it in a way that's not really going to make a distance. For he says, for he will do, the king will do whatever he pleases. Since a king's word is supreme, who can say to him, what are you doing? Translation, Solomon's saying, hey, your hot takes on X or post on Facebook or the conversations that you have, in your break room about your boss, they're not making as much of a difference, okay, as you think they are. Okay, the king's the king. Okay, and he's going to do whatever he wants. And he kind of continues, says it's not accomplishing what we hope it will accomplish. He continues, he says, whoever obeys his command will come to no harm. Now, that's not a promise. Okay, that's a proverb. That's a principle. And generally, that is true. Okay, generally, if we kind of obey authority figures, generally, life kind of goes better for us. And we all know instances where that hasn't happened, but generally, that's true. Whoever obeys his commands will come to no harm. And he says, and the wise heart, when it comes to dealing with people in authority, especially when we kind of don't agree with what they say, he says, the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a person may be weighed down by misery. He says when it comes to these authorities that God has established in this world, he's the one behind it. He says there is a proper time and procedure with how we relate to them. Okay, there is a time and a tone that we use, okay, when it comes to kind of these authorities that God has established. And it's not saying that, hey, we're always going to agree with them. And it's not saying that they're always going to get things right. Okay, but he's saying, hey, we don't lead with outrage. Okay, we're not quick to show public disrespect to the people in authority. There is a proper time and procedure here to do that. Solomon, he's urging us in this moment, hey, not to lead with outrage. He's calling us to act with discernment. He says, have discernment. When it comes to how you relate to authority figures in this world, have discernment in the way that you approach them, in the way that you go about it. Think of it this way. I've got two kids, okay, and I think, the scriptures clearly state, that God has given me authority over my kids. Okay, he's given me authority over them. He's given me the responsibility to be their leader, okay? I have authority over my kids. And if you're a parent out here, know that too. You've got authority over your children. God has given you that the leadership in their life, and it's a responsibility that we should take very seriously. But God, He's given me authority over my kids. But listen, just because my God has given me that authority over them, that doesn't mean, okay, that I'm always going to get it right. And that's what Solomon is saying right here. He's saying, hey, sometimes, because of the character or the conduct of the people in charge, he's saying, hey, sometimes people's lives can be weighed down with misery. Okay, the people in charge are not always going to make the right decisions. And so that's true with me and my kids. Okay, God's given me authority over them, but I don't always get it right. Okay, sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I overlook things. Sometimes I'm too quick to respond. Sometimes I'm just selfish and I want to do what's best for me. Sometimes I just don't know what to do and I just make bad decisions. Okay, sometimes I don't always get it right. But listen, just because I might sometimes get it wrong with my kids, that doesn't give them the right just to come up and say, "Hey, Dad, shut up! You're an idiot." Okay, listen, that's not going to fly. Like, that is not going to work in our home. I'm not always going to get it right, but there is a proper time and procedure for how they go about it. There is a time and a tone that they use. And so when they kind of got to about 9, 10, 11 years old, kind of hitting those preteen years, mainly because I kept making a lot of mistakes, Ashley and I decided, hey, we need to help our kids with this. Hey, we need to help them know how to have a proper time and procedure, a time and a tone, whenever we may get things wrong. And so here's what we did. We just taught our kids a little phrase. We said, hey, whenever, maybe we do something that you don't think is fair, okay, or maybe you make a bad decision, we just say, hey, here's what we want you to do. Rather than flying off the handle, okay, rather than cussing us out, okay, or rather whatever it is, like, here's what we want you to do instead. Hey, just say this phrase, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, can I tell you something you may not know? So can I tell you something you may not know? It's not like a magic phrase that just kind of worked for our family, but we said, hey, can I tell you something you may not know? And that was just a sign to us. It's like, okay, like, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. It doesn't mean, listen, that they're always going to change my mind. It doesn't mean that I'm always going to agree with them. But listen, when they approach me as their authority with the proper time and procedure, okay, with a time and a tone, I am significantly more likely, okay, to listen to their requests and listen to what they say when they approach me with humility and discernment rather than outrage. And that's the same thing when it comes to authority figures that God has placed in our life. It's not saying they're always going to get it right. Sometimes because of their character and their decisions, they're going to get it wrong, and it's going to weigh us down by misery. But that doesn't mean that we lead with outrage. He says we respond with humble discernment. And let me just say maybe for you, the most discerning thing for you, it may be, if you have the possibility, you have the ability, the most discerning thing for you may be to get out from underneath that authority. Okay, that may be the most discerning thing for you to do. Listen, you don't stay in abusive relationships. You don't stay in abusive churches. If you don't stay in toxic work environments, if you're able to. Listen, if you're able to get out of those situations, do it. Sometimes, the most discerning, humble, discerning thing for you to do may be to get out of that place of authority if you can do it. But for most of us, most of the time, as Christians, listen, as people who follow Jesus, we should be a joy to lead. We should be a joy to lead. So because we know, when we recognize that these authorities have been placed there by God, so when it comes to the authorities in your life, okay, your boss, your parents, okay, government officials, your HOA board, okay, that one gets on my nerves a lot, okay? When it comes to these authorities that God has placed around us and over us, listen, are you a joy to lead, or are you a burden to manage? Psalm says, you don't have to be in charge. We don't have to rule the world to live well in it, okay? We live as people who fear and follow God because we trust His sovereignty. We live with humble discernment, okay, toward those in authority over us. But like he said, okay, they're not always going to get it right. Okay, sometimes their decisions, because of their character and their conduct, okay, we are people who are weighed down by misery. And sometimes things get pretty bad. So what do we do in those moments? Okay, when the authority in this world that God has established continues to not get it right, and they're just spreading misery all over this world, how do we live? Like, how do we respond then? Solomon's going to going to give us a way to respond then. It's different, okay, than you would probably expect. It's different than I expected as I was kind of studying through this, but he's going to give us some advice, okay, kind of some real world advice there. And so number one, you don't have to rule the world to live well in it. Number one, we live with humble discernment. Okay, number two, he's going to say we live with joy that defies the darkness. Okay, live with joy that defies the darkness. Let me show you what he's talking about. Solomon here, he's just going to kind of describe what he is observing taking place in this world, okay, with the authority figures that we have. Verse 7, he says, since no one knows the future, who can tell someone else what is to come? Speaking of these authority, these people in charge, he's saying, hey, nobody can predict the future. Okay, nobody can predict the future. As no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the time of their death. As no one is discharged in time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. Nobody can predict the future. Nobody can control it, okay? Not ourselves or not anybody in charge. There are limits, okay? These people in authority, they have limits. And he's going to continue just to kind of say and describe what it is that he sees, okay? What he sees happening in this world. He says, all this I saw. Notice, this is what he's observing. All this I saw as I applied my mind to everything done under the sun. There is a time when a man lords it over others to his own hurt. As he just looks out, he says, hey, you know what I see? A lot of people out there, they're using their God-loaned authority to do some pretty ungodly things. And it's hurting themselves. It's hurting this world. That's what I see. And he continues, then too, I saw. Here's what I see happening in the world. I saw the wicked buried. Those who used to come and go from the holy place and receive praise in the city where they did this. This too is meaningless. He says, you know what I see out in the world? Like there's these people who they died and they're having their funeral and people are just telling a bunch of lies about them. Like they were terrible people, and their funeral comes and people are just telling them all these good things about them that weren't really true. He says, you know what I see? I see the wicked being praised. I see the wicked prospering. That's what I just look out and see happening under the authority in this world. He says that's meaningless. He continues to tell more what he saw. He says when the sentence for a crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. You know what else I see? Like people are just, the justice is slow in this world. Okay, there is injustice in this world. The people are slow to exercise it for whatever reason, and it's contagious. Wickedness is getting contagious. The wicked are getting emboldened because, listen, I don't really see a lot of justice happening in this world. That's what I see. Although a wicked person who commits 100 crimes may live a long time. And you just say, hey, here's what I see. This is what the world is like. Okay, listen, there are wicked people in charge who are doing a lot of wicked things. Okay, people are hurting. There is injustice in the world. This is what I see. Okay, this is what I observe in this world. That's what I see. But then he changes. He says, here's what I know. And this is a pretty significant shift, actually, in the whole book. Solomon, he's been just talking about what he observes in the world. He says, this is what I see. But then he says, but here's what I know. Here's what I believe. Here's what I'm sure it has to be true. He says, that's what I see. Here's what I know. I know that it will go better for those who fear God, who are reverent before him. Yet because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like the shadow. Solomon says, I look out and I see just this wickedness in the world, but here's what I do know. Like I know that it's better to fear God. It's better to follow him. It's better things that ultimately that's what's best. It's better to fear and follow God. That's what I know is true. But again, it's not what he sees. Verse 14, he says, there's something else meaningless that occurs on earth. The righteous who get what the wicked deserve, and the wicked who get what the righteous deserve. This, too, I say, is meaningless. And this is why I love the book of Ecclesiastes. Because Solomon, he's just wrestling with it right here. He's like, and this is what we feel. It's like, I know it's better to fear God. I know it's better to follow him. I know that's better, but that's not what I see. And what I see is not lining up with what I know. Is that I know it's better to follow God. I know it's better to fear him. But when I just look at it, man, it really looks like evil and injustice and wickedness is winning the day. And so what do I do? How do I respond to that situation as people who fear and follow God when what we see doesn't line up with what we know? What's our response? Well, Psalm's going to tell us, and it's interesting what he says. Verse 15, he says, so here's what I commend. I'm seeing this. There's this tension. Here's what I commend. I commend the enjoyment of life, because there is nothing better for a person under the sun than to eat and drink and be glad. Then joy will accompany them in their toil all the days of the life God has given them under the sun. Now, I don't know about you, that makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, I read that, I'm like, what are you talking about? You kind of had me. Like we were on the same page. Like we were kind of going through life. Like I see all this wickedness going on, and evil is winning, and wickedness is winning, and you're like, hey, yeah, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Throw a party. Like throw a party and just be happy. Like what's he talking about here? Like what does he mean? Like how is that the proper response to the injustice that we see in this world? Joy. Hey, throw a party and be joyful in the face of it. Throw a party and be joyful in spite of the injustice we see in this world. How does that work? How does that make sense? Have you ever heard of a justice party? If I say that term justice party, do you know what I'm talking about? Amber, you know what I'm talking about here? I thought you might know. So a justice party, it's a celebration, okay? It's a celebration that people who have been denied justice, or maybe, justice has kind of been slow coming their way for a while, especially like in a court case or something along those lines. It's this kind of celebration they have when that moment of justice comes for them. Okay, when the sentence is handed down and they kind of receive justice. Okay, it's a justice party. I've never been to one myself, but our pastor at our Southwest congregation, Chris Freeland, he actually went to one of these. Okay, and he mentioned this at their congregation last week, and he's told me the story before. But he went to a justice party for a family that goes to our church at our Southwest congregation. And I will spare you the details of this family's story because it's tragic, a tragic story. But in essence, this family's daughter, her life was ended, okay, by a man who should have been behind bars, okay, long before he ever got to her. And this whole story and this man's whole story, it was just, I mean, honestly, one massive failure of justice on every single turn. And this man, he ended this family, he ended this young woman's life. And they finally arrested him. He's caught, he's tried, he's found guilty. He's sentenced to life behind bars. And whenever that sentence came out, this family, they threw one of these justice parties. Okay, they threw kind of a celebration, and they just invited the detectives, they invited the prosecutor, they invited all of the advocates that helped them along the way, just as a way to say thank you. Okay, thank you that in some sense we were able to experience some level of justice in this world. He says it was a justice party, and it was a celebration, but it also wasn't. Because no matter that the fact that this man is put behind bars for the rest of his life, and don't get me wrong, that man needs to be behind bars for the rest of his life. But even the fact that sentence came down, and this man was put behind bars for the rest of his life, they are always going to have an empty chair at their dinner table. It's not a one-for-one trade. It's not a one-for-one trade. In this world, under the sun that we live in, listen, justice, even justice, the best it can do, it will never be justice. But this family, they decided to throw a party, to throw a celebration. They knew that justice, that was what they really wanted, wasn't ever going to come, but they decided just to throw this celebration anyway. And by choosing to celebrate anyway, by choosing to celebrate in this moment, this family was quietly living out what Solomon's pointing to in this passage. Listen, in Solomon, he's not saying, hey, don't care about injustice. Hey, don't care about the unjust things that happen to you or the unjust things that we see in this world. He's not saying don't care about the injustice that we see or face in this world. He's simply saying that just because our world is broken, okay, it doesn't mean that it has to break us. Just because our world is broken, it doesn't mean that it has to break us. Throwing that party was their way of saying, yes, this is a terrible situation that we see, but we know that we're made for more than this. We're made for more than what this world can offer. I see injustice in this world. I see injustice in my life. But I know that this isn't all there is. This side of death is not all that there is. There's more to it than that. Listen, we should fight against injustice at every turn. Okay, when we see it, listen, we should speak out against it. We should fight it. We don't stand by and just take it lightly. We should fight injustice. But listen, if you're hoping the day is going to come, okay, to where our authorities, our leaders are going to just kind of figure it all out, okay, and they're going to come up with a plan and they're going to make that world right, the world right. Listen, that day's not coming. That day's not coming when they're going to figure that. We know that. We see that. We see the inability of the rulers and authorities in this world to solve the problems in this world. But we also know, that there's a greater ruler out there, Jesus Christ. And he came and he voluntarily became a victim of injustice himself. He died a death he didn't deserve. The cross was the place where the worst possible thing happened to the best possible person. Yet 3 days later, he came back to life. And on the other side of the cross, we see that the cross was the place to where the justice of God and the mercy of God met and came for us. And we see that, and that's what we know. And one day, some way, somehow, because of what he accomplished on the cross, Jesus is going to make every wrong right. Someday he is going to make every wrong right, and we can live with a joy that defies the darkness. Not because of what we see, but because of what we know. What we know about Jesus and who he is. You don't have to rule the world to live well in it. Because there is one who rules. Okay, and he's over all these things, and he will make everything right. What if we live that way? What if we responded that way? What if we chose humble discernment over constant outrage? What if instead of shouting in frustration, we engage with people in this world with wisdom and patience, even when the people in charge get it wrong? What if we didn't let injustice make us bitter, but chose joy as a way to push back the darkness? Not a fake smile, not shallow optimism, but a deep, defiant joy rooted in the empty tomb, and that we know that God's not finished yet. He's not finished yet. The story is not over. What if the church became known for not just what we stand against, and that's a part of it, but for the unshakable hope that we carry when the world feels like it's fallen apart? Even if we don't rule the world, we can live well in it with wisdom, with trust, and with joy. Because even though we see injustice in the world now, we know that Jesus is the King who's going to make all things right. Let me pray for us. Father, I just thank you for really just this timely word. God, that over 3,000 years of authority that you have placed in this world and in our life, that God, over 3,000 years, we still haven't got it right. And God, there have been steps and there's been progress, but Jesus, we ache for a world where injustice doesn't rule. We ache for a ruler, for a king who will ultimately make things right. Jesus, thank you that you came and you dealt with injustice, you dealt with sin. And Jesus, we have the hope that this world is not what we're made for. And this isn't all that there ever is going to be. But Jesus, even when we don't see it, we know. We know that you rule. We know that you're sovereign. We know that you're in charge. And we can live in hope and with joy, even with joy, in spite of what we see. So Lord, I pray that we would be those kind of people in our world today, that we would shine lights of hope and true justice and love in a world where sometimes it's hard to see it. We pray all this in Jesus' name.